Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another special video. And today we're going to be diving deep into Saturn in Aquarius. And so as I'm recording this, Saturn is at 29 degrees in the sign of Capricorn, and it's just about to make that big shift into the sign of Aquarius. And this is a transit that's going to be impacting all of us very intensely for the next 3 years of our lives. This is a 3-year transit of Saturn in Aquarius that lasts all the way through to March of 2023. And so this is a powerful energy, and rather than including this in my normal weekly forecast, I really felt like this warranted its own video because this is a huge topic, and especially with everything that's going on in the world right now, I felt like this deserved its own separate video so I can really focus in on the energy and give you guys a lot of detailed insight into what's coming up on a global scale and also on an individual level, because of course we will be getting into a forecast for all 12 signs as well. And before we get into this video, I just want to mention to you guys, I do have an in-depth 4.5-hour webinar all about Saturn and astrology called Mastering Saturn, where we get into everything from Saturn in your birth chart, your personal Saturn placement, your personal Saturn cycles, which are hugely important. Saturn is the master of time, and so Saturn cycles are huge milestones in people's lives, and you're always going to be at a certain point in your Saturn cycle, and so we dive into that. We talk about Saturn transits, Saturn aspects in the chart, pretty much everything you need to know to navigate the energy of Saturn. And because Saturn's moving into Aquarius, I wanted to give you guys a special discount on that webinar for anyone who wants to get some deeper insight into this big shift in your own life. You can get 30% off using the coupon code Aquarius30. And the link to do that is down in the description below. And I hope to see you guys, some of you guys in that webinar, and you're always free to email me with questions. And so getting into what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to start actually with an overview of the energy of Saturn and Aquarius and how this is likely to impact the global energies and how this is more likely to impact society as a whole, because I think this is important. With Saturn, it is an outer planet. The outer planets, for those who are not already aware, many of you have taken my outer planet webinars, and so you understand this a little bit. But for those who maybe don't have as deep of an understanding about the outer planets, they tend to be more of a broad scale influence. They're more generational. They have to do with shifts in our culture, in our society as a whole. And so that's an important part of looking at Saturn and Aquarius, is looking at the societal changes, the big shifts that will be going on over the course of the next couple of years on a more global scale. And I'm actually kind of glad that I have been so busy and I wasn't able to record this super far in advance. I'm actually recording it sort of in the moment. We have Saturn moving into Aquarius in just about 3 days here from the time that I'm recording this. And we are in the middle of a huge shift in our society as a whole, not just because of Saturn moving into Aquarius, but because of a lot of different things that are going on astrologically right now, which I'm thinking I might have to do a separate video on. Just to kind of give people some additional information about what the heck is going on right now. Because again, I've been so busy and I haven't had time to do something like that. And I feel like this information is really needed and could be very helpful at this time. But pretty much anytime you see whatever you're seeing going on that global scale during the time frame between one of those outer planets moving from one sign to the next. So when it hits that 29th degree in the previous sign and that 0 to 1 degree in the new sign that it's transiting into, you get a huge taste for what is about to be coming up in our own personal lives, but you can also start to see some of those themes emerging on a societal level. And oh my goodness, in the past week especially, it's become very clear to me what this Saturn and Aquarius transit is going to be bringing for us. And it's not going to necessarily be easy. Saturn is the planet that rules things like restrictions, limitations, oppression, burden, hardships. It's known as the Great Malefic in traditional astrology because it says no to things. It brings, difficult, challenging circumstances that can feel insurmountable. And sometimes, they can be insurmountable for certain people depending on your individual circumstances. Saturn rules fear in traditional astrology, and Saturn and Pluto both have an association with fear. And we're just coming out of a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which happened in January of 2020, January of this year. And we're coming into this shift now with the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and then Saturn moving into the sign of Aquarius, where it will almost immediately be joined by Mars. So what does this all mean? Well, first and foremost, let's talk about the sort of broad scale themes of Saturn and Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius. So one of the things that's been coming up in the past couple of weeks that it just dawned on me yesterday when I was sort of reflecting on the energies of Saturn and Aquarius, preparing for this video, that this new term, this new phrase that's being pumped into the media right now, social distancing. This is by far the most Saturn and Aquarius thing I have ever heard of in my entire life. Aquarius rules social gatherings, group orientations. It rules friends and social networks. It's the most socially oriented sign and the most humanitarian and socially conscious of all the signs, but it's also a sign that's very enigmatic in the fact that it's very friendly, but also very emotionally detached and distant, right? And then we have Saturn, which separates, which causes limitations and restrictions. And so very literally, this energy around social distancing is putting limitations and restrictions on our ability to connect with groups at a group level. And this is impacting all of society and changing the way that we view our associations with groups of people. And this is something that I don't believe will change. I think this is the precursor to something bigger and more long-standing. The fear that's being drilled into people's heads right now, that anxiety, I don't think that that's necessarily going to go away on a social level and on a broader scale. I think that a part of that, even after the coronavirus pandemic, whatever is going on, passes, and we will pass through this, I think that one of the concepts that's going to stick is going to be that concept of social distancing, because people are going to be more hyper aware of the fact that if they come in close contact with other people, disease can be spread, and there's already this conditioning that's going on here. We're being conditioned to fear large groups of people because of the risk of spread of disease. And I don't think because this is a conditioning that's going on a very vast global scale, I don't think that's going to completely go away, especially because Saturn's moving into Aquarius, and it just makes absolutely perfect sense that this would be happening right now in this moment. And so social distancing might not continue in this extreme form that we're seeing right now in this moment, but that theme of keeping a distance from other people, that theme of not gathering in large groups, and even the limitations and restrictions that are being imposed by people in positions of authority, government authority, limitation, restriction, rules, regulations, those are all Saturn. I don't think that's necessarily going to lift. I think we're going to see more of that even after this phase that we're in right now begins to pass. And so that's one of the things that is going to be kind of a downside and a little bit of a hardship we're going to be dealing with throughout this 3-year transit of Saturn in Aquarius. Another thing that we're seeing right now that very strongly out in the ethers and, just that's impacting a lot of us on an individual level is this theme of working from home and utilizing technology for work. And so Saturn rules like work, corporations especially, and structures and governments and things of that nature. Aquarius is technology, and Aquarius rules the internet. And so I think after this phase passes, after this pandemic scare passes, I do think that more companies, especially large corporations, are going to be pushing to bring in new technologies and to utilize different technologies in order to allow their employees to work from home, to mitigate the risk of something like this happening again that could impact their bottom line, impact their profits. And also, hopefully they care about their employees. A lot of these corporations obviously do not, but some of them do. And so the ones that do are also going to be thinking about how can we keep our employees working and sustained in their job positions and things like that. And so that's going to be part of this as well. We'll see a lot of new technologies around businesses working from home, internet-based meetings and, internet-based variations of how we can work together but not actually be together. Like these types of things, which are already pretty big, are going to really explode over the next few years. And so you'll see more people even after the coronavirus goes away, because it will, even after that sort of goes away and subsides, and that's not really a factor anymore, the psychological implications of this are going to be very long withstanding. And I do think that people will continue to work from home, or companies will start to make a move toward allowing employees to work from home, or creating structures around utilizing technology to work with people at a distance in case something like this comes up again. So you're going to see a lot of that being pumped out, and that's going to be a big factor. Another thing too, and I'm talking about the complications of this most predominantly and first because that's what Saturn is, right? It's challenge, it's oppression, it's limitation, it's things that we're a little bit afraid to deal with, and it's going to bring limitations and restriction. That's just part of Saturn. And so especially at the onset of Saturn in Aquarius, that's what we're going to be seeing, this restructuring in terms of social norms and social etiquette, which we're already starting to see at the onset, right? The social distancing thing is a prime example of that. I do think that people are going to be doing more group gatherings online via the internet using technology, and they're going to be connecting less in person in groups. And so that's not going to be as commonplace moving forward, especially just because of the ease of doing things online. So if you already have a web-based company, which I'm very grateful that that's what I do, I work only online, and so I'm already set up for that. But if you already have a web-based company, you're kind of already ahead of the game here. And if you don't, thinking about ways that you can incorporate technology and ways that you can plan around things like this, because I do think that this is going to continue, not because of a pandemic, but I do think this will continue moving forward, and people are going to be moving in this direction for other reasons. Thinking about ways that you can do that, and that you can work remotely, and that you can connect with people at a distance without actually being with them, and connect in a very heartfelt way, because that's going to be kind of what we're going to be limited in, right? We're not going to be able to connect heart to heart. We're not going to be able to connect in this genuine and authentic way quite as readily as we were able to in the past. And so that's something that we're going to have to navigate around and figure out solutions for. There are other energies in the astrology that'll be coming up that I think will help to support that, but it's just something to kind of be aware of. There's so much going on right now too, like just in general right now, that I want to talk about, that again will be in a separate video, hopefully sometime in the next week, because there's so much with this. There's a lot going on right now, and it all makes such sense astrologically that it's just insane. But this Saturn Aquarius thing is pretty big. And so that's kind of on one side. On the other side, we are going to be able to, navigate the world using technology a lot more effectively, because there will be new structures in place. And so that will be part of it. However, the one thing that I do kind of, that I'm a little bit cautious about, or that I'm a little bit kind of, not nervous about, but I can kind of foresee this coming, is that with the limitations being imposed on our ability to connect with people in groups, and us being, only or predominantly connected with each other, even in the workplace via the internet, which is the shift we'll be seeing in the next few years, limitations and restrictions and regulations on the internet and content that's put out via the internet will very likely increase. And so there's going to be more government regulation and government interference when it comes to free speech and our ability to connect in a way that we might want to, in a way that's more independent, free thinking, rebellious, right? Those Aquarius themes, which rule alternative viewpoints, alternative thought. They rule rebellion. They rule, breaking the rules, right? That's Aquarius. And Saturn is kind of, putting a damper on that. Our ability to rebel in terms of like meeting in groups in order to protest, that's going to be squashed with the Saturn and Aquarius energy, or there's going to be heavier restrictions or regulations around these types of things. And so those types of meetings are going to occur predominantly online. And I think on a global scale, we'll see more internet shutdowns and internet censorship as a result of this. And so all of those things might sound kind of scary, but understanding what's going on, I think, is going to be crucial, because we still need to maintain that social connection. We still need to maintain some sort of structure around connecting with people on a grassroots level in real time throughout this process. And I do think that that's going to be something that's going to be coming up due to other influences in the astrology, almost as a way of mitigating this or a backlash against it. But there are other things like, the North Node moving into Gemini that I think will actually create more community involvement, and that'll sort of be the backlash against any sort of censorship that's going on via technology, the internet, or this maybe inability to collect in large groups. I think communities are going to start working together a lot more so over the next year and a half in particular. And that's going to be a big thing and a big theme. It's going to be less global, less about, connecting with people at a distance and traveling overseas and shipping things from here and there, because people are realizing that disruptions to the supply chain mean that if you don't have something locally, that you're not going to have it, right? And so I live in a small town. 70% of the produce or the organic produce in Colorado is actually grown in this little valley where I live. There's still plenty of food. A lot of the mass-produced things in the shops around here are running low because there are certain people who are hoarding different items and whatnot. But for the most part, I'm not concerned about that because we have a good local setup. When you look at the larger cities right now, that's not necessarily what's going on. You see photos from Austin, Texas, where I used to live, and there's just bare, empty shelves because things are being imported from the outside predominantly. And so I think that local focus will be a part of it. That community focus will be a part of it. Again, that's a topic for another video. But I just want you to know that there are mitigating influences here. And so what's coming up in the next couple of weeks is that, first off, on March 21st, which is this Saturday, Saturn's going to enter Aquarius. This is going to be the very first little taste of Saturn in Aquarius, and that's going to last pretty much up until July 1st, and then Saturn will retrograde out of Aquarius. And so this is where we're getting this true first taste, this first idea of what Saturn in Aquarius is going to bring on a societal level, as well as what it's going to bring on a very personal level in our own lives. And even leading up to that, a lot of us are starting to see what's going to be occurring there. And so, that's part of the energy. Another thing that could potentially be happening here is that Saturn's also going to be, well, let's go in order here because we're going to need to go in order. So Saturn is going to immediately conjunct Mars, and that's going to happen on April 1st, and that's kind of what we've been building toward. And we're going to see some very heavy limitations and restrictions, some very immediate action being taken. And I think around that time period, which is really, strong even right now, we're going to be getting a very intense, very concentrated, focused idea of what's going on in our own lives with the Saturn energies in Aquarius and the challenges that we're going to have to overcome, the lessons that we need to learn. But again, as a society, we're looking at that same thing. And so keeping an eye on what's going on globally is going to give you a good idea of what's going to be taking place over this like long-term transit of Saturn and Aquarius. That doesn't mean that it's going to be this intense the entire time, because it won't. There is a lot going on right now that's fueling that intensity, but we are seeing what's coming up in the midst of that intensity. Those themes are already emerging. And so that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the table here and just kind of let you guys know, because using your eyes and your ears to kind of pay attention to what's going on can help you to understand insights that I might not even have about what's coming up with this Saturn and Aquarius transit. And it's very, very intensified and very, very concentrated right now in this moment and over the next couple of weeks. And for those who are watching this in the future, thinking back to that time, you'll probably see those themes emerging very gradually over and over again throughout the next couple of years. And so it's all still relevant. And so that's part of what's going on here. At the end of this year, we actually have on December 21st, the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is known as the Great Conjunction. This is actually considered to be a more positive influence. It's the Great Malefic and the Great Benefic coming together to bring really powerful insights, a broader scale perspective on the situations that we're dealing with. A lot of really incredible teachers can emerge around this time. And so this is not necessarily a bad influence per se. However, one of the things that the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is associated with that I mentioned most recently, I think in my video with Robert Phoenix, where we talked about the mundane astrology for the year ahead, one of the things that occurs every Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, every great conjunction, is that the president of the United States either has an assassination attempt, they die maybe of some sort of health issue, they actually get assassinated, or their life is put at risk in some sort of way. And so that happens across the board almost every single time we have the great conjunction every 30-something years, and we're having that come up again. And so that's occurring just after the presidential election. It doesn't mean that on the day of the Great Conjunction, which is on December 21st, that this happens. It just means within that sort of field, within that time frame of a few months, or within that presidency that president is elected within, then there could be some sort of upset in that regard. More recently, there haven't been deaths or assassinations, but there have been attempts or things that have sort of risked the lives of the presidents. And so it's just something to kind of be aware of and make note of, that this is one of those years. And so that's part of the energy that's coming up here as well. But in terms of how that impacts us on a personal level, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that this is going to be us gaining a sense of perspective and a broader sense of optimism and understanding, and this sort of innate wisdom that's brought to us regarding what it is that we're facing, regarding the challenges that lie ahead, and how to navigate these things very, very effectively. And that'll start to come about in December of 2020. And so we'll start to see that shift in our mindset, that shift in the energy. And that's when we're fully into Saturn and Aquarius. After that time period in 2021, we start to hit that Saturn square to Uranus. And that's where the financial restructuring aspect of this comes into play. About 2 years ago, I think, I did a very in-depth video about Uranus and Taurus and what that would bring for us over the 8-year transit on a global scale. And in that video, I talked about the fact that there's probably going to be an economic disruption, a disruption to the food supply, and an economic restructuring. The period in which this is going to be initiated is now. And so, again, I've mentioned many times in different videos, the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which is happening right now in this moment around the exact time of the ingress of Saturn into Aquarius, that is associated with recession. And so the last time we had that Pluto-Jupiter conjunction, we had the Great Recession of 2008 that occurred just after that time period, where the housing bubble collapsed and the wealthy people were able to consolidate and acquire more resources as a result of this because they strategized, they planned for it, they knew it was coming. And people who didn't have as much money, they lost a lot. And so there was a greater disparity in wealth. A lot of people, though, who didn't have a lot were able to acquire a lot as a result of this. And a lot of people started flipping houses and doing things with property and things like that, too. And so it did kind of go both ways. Same thing going on right now with that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. However, the thing that's making this a little bit more extreme and the thing that's causing this to create an actual restructuring of the financial system is this Uranus and Taurus energy and Saturn squaring Uranus and Taurus, which is going to be happening all of 2021. It'll even be still kind of occurring in 2022, especially at the end of 2022. There's going to be a very close square, but not exact, between Saturn and Uranus. And so this is going to be a long-term process where the way that we look at finances, the economic structure and paradigm that we live within, that's going to change. That's going to change very dramatically. But again, it's going to happen in small doses, and that's starting now. The reason it's starting now is not just because of that Pluto-Jupiter conjunction. It's because Saturn's ingressing into the sign of Aquarius, and it's starting to hit that orb of the square with Uranus, but it won't come exact until next year. And so next year is going to be the big overhaul. This is just us seeing the beginning phases of this and what this overhaul and what this change in the financial structure of our society might look like. And so that's where we're at right now. Moving into next year, that's where the major restructuring takes place. And so we have 3 key dates here. And so these key dates are not only going to be active on the dates, about a month before and a month after, we'll be feeling this energy very intensely. And so those are the time frames to really pay attention to when it comes to the financial restructuring that I'm talking about here and the changes on a societal level. This isn't just financial restructuring. I think this is going to be a restructuring of the supply chain, the way that we obtain food and deal with resources around food. That's going to be a big thing that's going to be coming up now and into the future. And that's really the energy of that Saturn-Uranus square that we're talking about here. And so the key dates are February 18th of 2021. So really January through March. That's going to be a pivotal time with the restructuring of the supply chain, the economic restructuring. Like what that looks like is still kind of a little up in the air. Of course, a digital currency makes sense. That's what I talked about last time around, but it's going to be a very controlled digital currency that's going to probably be put in place by governments and not a decentralized type of thing like people would want it to be. And so that's kind of what I see with that Saturn energy. Not necessarily, what we want, but it's probably going to be the case. There are ways around this, of course, and we can create our own structures around currency. We can create our own methods of trade, especially on that digital level, and that's going to be part of this too. I think you'll see a lot of backlash there, and a lot of people kind of trying to create their own systems, but there's also going to be a system imposed on us, and that I think is going to be part of this. So the restructuring that's taking place, again, spring of 2021, and then in June, so pretty much it's January, February, March, and then June it's active again. So May, June, July, and then at the end of the year we're going to have December. So November, December, and then January of 2022. Those are going to be the most active periods with this restructuring energy. Because December 24th of 2021 is that last date, around the supply chain, food, and our economic structure as a whole. So that's going to be a part of what we're going to be seeing here. And so looking at the things that they're trying to suggest as a way of mitigating this recession that we're already very quickly moving into, like things like having a universal basic income, things like alleviating debt or having some sort of debt reduction or debt forgiveness. That would be, something that could potentially be very positive. But the other things they're doing are, pumping money into the stock market to elevate it for 15 minutes and then it disappears. They're reducing interest rates for wealthy people. So there's things like, you're going to see both sides of this. You're going to see this facade of caring about people on an individual level that may or may not be true with these politicians and people in government. And so you'll see people trying to push forward different agendas that have to do with financial restructuring that's geared toward individual people and the common person. But you'll also see even more so this restructuring on a higher level. And that's what those are the things that are going to move forward very quickly. And that are going to be less debated, I would say, when it comes to our government. So that's part of what's going on there. But again, this is also a financial restructuring on an individual level. This is us figuring out what we truly want, need, and desire. And again, there's this energy of utilizing technology and also creating our own structures, utilizing technology so we can have our own freedom and independence on an individual level and also on a group level. And so you're going to see people coming together and creating their own little financial systems, maybe within their communities, maybe on a broader scale. And so that's going to be happening too, I think, in pockets. And we're going to see a lot of that and a lot of that backlash and a lot of that rebellion, which is that Uranus energy rebelling against Saturn, which is the system, its conformity, its restraint, limitation, and restriction. And there's going to be a big push between those two energies in 2021 in particular, where I think a lot of the backlash will start to happen because we're not in the middle of necessarily a global pandemic or whatever's going on right now. So anyway, that's the big energy that I see. The only other big thing coming up again is in 2022, actually, where the nodes will square Saturn. And so that's going to be a big energy in 2022 where sort of the direction we're heading in as a society will change. And that'll be another big financial change because the nodes will be hitting Uranus, and the nodes are going to be in Taurus and in Scorpio. And so a lot of this Saturn and Aquarius energy at a surface level doesn't seem like it's financial, but it is. It doesn't seem like it has to do with food and with the supply chain and with our food supply, but it does because of that interaction with that Taurus energy. That's the big theme I see on a global scale. And so pretty much, on our end, it's kind of like, what are we going to make with this? What are we going to do with this? Are we going to allow certain agendas to be pushed through? Are we going to create our own systems on an individual grassroots level? How are we going to navigate this energy moving forward? And that's something to start thinking about. That's something to start talking about with your friends, your family, your community, people that you care about, because that's going to be important. If we don't do this for ourselves, if we don't create what we want, it will be created for us. And normally I have more of like an inspiring thing to say about that. But I guess that is my inspiring thing to say. This is a time where we can make some major changes. And if we band together and if we, put the energy into it, and if we take responsibility for ourselves and what we're creating in our own lives and the way that we're either enabling this or not enabling it and maybe pushing something else through, that's going to be, I think, where we have a lot of control over this situation. But it's just a matter of whether or not people are going to activate that potential, right? And so I know a lot of people will, a lot of my viewers will, and so that's pretty awesome, and that always gives me hope, especially just going to my comment section and reading all of your wonderful comments. And you guys are very on the level, you're very insightful, you're very aware of what's going on, and that is awesome to see, especially on such a big scale. And so I do think that a lot of really positive potential can occur here with this. So it's just a matter of us taking things into our own hands and navigating it for ourselves. There is going to be an energy of self-responsibility. And also the other thing too with Saturn and Aquarius is that we're going to be feeling an added sense of responsibility for the group and for society as a whole and for humanity as a whole. And so people are going to want to be helping out, putting in the work, putting in the effort, taking care of other people. even if there is some sort of effort to limit our ability to do that, I really feel like people are going to be fighting for it. People are going to be looking out for each other, and people are going to be looking out for what's good for humanity. And that's going to be part of this too. We're going to be feeling a greater sense of responsibility on a social level. And we're already starting to see that a little bit with what's going on right now as we're dipping our toes into the water with Saturn and Aquarius. And so that is pretty much what I've got for you on the big scale Saturn and Aquarius energy. And so let's get into the forecast now for all 12 signs. And I'm going to give you guys hopefully a good detailed interpretation so you can understand how this is going to be impacting you most predominantly. This is going to be a forecast that's going to be most accurate for your rising sign. So listen to your rising sign first. Sun sign is secondary. If you want to listen to your moon sign, some people find that very helpful, especially people with strong lunar energy. That's okay too. But just know that the moon sign energy is going to be more internalized and more emotional and subjective, as opposed to relating to objective actual events that'll be occurring in your life. There will be actual events with the moon sign, but it's not going to be as predominant of a theme. And so that's just something to make note of there. All right, so let's get started with Aries and Aries rising. So for Aries rising, this energy with Saturn in the sign of Aquarius is going to be happening in your 11th house. The 11th house is the house of your social networks. It's the house of your friends, your group orientations, and the people that you surround yourself with by choice. And so when Saturn moves into the 11th house, the most common thing that I see with my clients and the thing that happened in my own life is that there's a limitation or restriction that's imposed on your ability to socialize with people. Sometimes that's a self-imposed limitation where you realize that certain people are just not serious. Certain people are not in it for the long haul. Certain responsibilities that you hold toward other people, toward your friends, certain social obligations are not worth the trouble. They're too much burden. They're more trouble than they're worth. And so you'll find yourself very gradually over the course of the next 3 years, letting go of certain group connections, letting go of certain friendships, restricting your socializing in a lot of ways. And part of that's going to be because you're not looking for surface level connections right now. You're looking for people who are going to be very solid, very sturdy. You're looking to create really good foundations for your group associations, for your networks, for your friendships. You're looking for people who are going to stick with you and be very reliable and dependable. And you're creating really solid relationships right now that are going to withstand the next 30-year cycle of Saturn. When I had Saturn transit through my 11th house, I let go of a lot of my party friends from my college years, and I made a lot of really good solid friendships, or I shouldn't say a lot, I made a few, 3 really good solid friendships that I know are going to stick with me and have been with me ever since then. And so these are really valuable, really solid relationships that you're going to be carrying with you. Anything else is going to be excess, and you're not going to want to hold on to that. This is looking at where you're carrying too much responsibility for flaky people, where you're carrying too much responsibility for social obligations and group orientations. Maybe you are the leader of some sort of group, or maybe you're involved in certain groups or organizations, and you're realizing that this is not necessarily worthwhile. This is not helping me with my career. This is not helping me on any level. This is more burden than it's worth. And so you'll let go of those obligations. This is also a time where you might start your own group or organization, especially if it's geared toward social change or, helping people on a societal level. That could be something that you could be working really hard on throughout this time. And so that could be part of this energy too. Most times though, with this Saturn energy, it's a self-imposed sort of social limitation that you're going through because Saturn is actually going to be in a nice sextile with your ascendant, a trine with your descendant. It's a more positive influence where you're very gradually restructuring your social obligations in general. And so a lot of times it is more of a self-imposed energy. Sometimes you might lose some friendships, but it's almost going to be like a relief that you lost them if it happens because of some sort of external circumstance. And so that'll be part of it too. This is also a time where you might meet new friends through work or through work-related parties or work-related gatherings or events. And this is one of the best times to network for work. And so, work-related connections, business connections, serious connections are going to be favorable over the next 3 years for you. And so that's something that you can focus your energy on, and you can make a lot of headway. And for those of you who are in relationship, this is a really great time for you to strengthen your bonds in your marriage partnership, in your close, long-term personal relationships, where those are going to become more and more solid and stable and committed over the course of this time frame. And it's going to happen very naturally, very on its own, without you having to really put forth a lot of effort into that. And so that's one of the benefits of this energy too. And if you're not in relationship, this is a time where you're going to be wanting something serious. You're not going to be wanting to play around. And so, you're not going to be as geared toward like flings and love affairs and, little short-term relationships. You're going to want something that's serious, stable, and long-lasting, more likely. Toward the middle of this transit, there could be this energy of wanting to rebel against your current financial circumstances, or this energy around wanting to change something so you're more financially independent, which has already been occurring. And just kind of be aware that there could be some sort of social obligation, or there could be some sort of social conditioning or social norms that you're adhering to that are maybe preventing you from moving forward with that. All right. And then for Taurus and for Taurus rising, this Saturn energy in Aquarius is going to be happening in your 10th house, which is the house of career and public reputation. And so this is going to be a 3-year period where you're going to have to work really hard for your not for your resources, but you're going to have to work really hard to create a solid foundation, a solid platform for your career goals and plans moving forward. For those who are entering into your retirement years, a lot of times the Saturn transit through somebody's 10th house is the time when they enter into retirement. My own mother, for example, had Saturn moving into her 10th house, and at the very end of the Saturn transit through her 10th house just now, she actually entered into retirement with Saturn in Capricorn. And so that's something that's really common. And so if that is something that you're thinking about, retiring, winding down, or cutting back your time at work, then this is the time where you're going to very gradually be easing into that next phase of life. For those who are still young and spry and wanting to work really hard and create a really solid career path for yourself moving forward, this is a time where you're going to have to get down to business. There could be limitations or restrictions imposed on your work, imposed on your career path. Your bosses might be barreling down on you. Your work might feel much more oppressive, restrictive, limiting, heavy throughout this time period. If that's the case, this is a clue that you need to change something, that you need to work on letting go of your old career path so you can work toward creating the foundation for a new path that's going to continue to grow and build over the next 30-year cycle of Saturn. This isn't a short-term transit. This isn't something about short-term gratification. This is about looking toward your long-term goals and plans for your career. Where do you want to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now? Start planning for that. Start thinking about that, and start realizing your goals and how you can start working now to achieve them. It's not going to happen all at once. It's going to take some time, and it might take a lot longer than you might want it to, especially during this initial phase. But the end results of this are going to be very powerful and very rewarding. Anything you're doing right now is setting you up for the next 30-year cycle of Saturn in your 10th house of career. And so you want to make sure that you're not locking yourself in to a career path you hate, or that feels oppressive or burdensome or just bad. Anything that's not in alignment with what you truly want, need, and desire, anything that's not in alignment with what you want for yourself with your career, anything that's stifling your independence and creativity in your career field, now's the time to start working very slowly and gradually and methodically on letting go. This isn't a time, again, for rushing into something. So think about how you can make small, sustained efforts every single day over the next 3 years to reach your long-term goals when it comes to your career path. these things might not pay off exactly in the moment, but you'll start to see progress. And at the end of this cycle, you'll realize that you restructured something and you created a really good foundation for the future. And as you start to move through those Saturn cycles, rewards will start to come to you, at these certain pivotal points. But this is really a time for that. Some of you might experience some sort of hardship where maybe you lose a job. If that is the case, this is a time for you to work toward what you truly want in your career. If you were in a career that you thought you really loved, think about how you can do that more independently. This is a really great time to start structuring, start creating the structure for your own business or your own company even. Something along those lines, right? Especially if it's like an internet-based company or it's involving technology. Now is a time where you can put in that effort and set up yourself for success for the future. All right, for Gemini and for Gemini rising, Saturn's going to be transiting through your 9th house, which is the house of long distance travel. It's the house of your perspective on life through your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you. It's the house of higher education, higher knowledge, higher wisdom. And so all of these things are going to be subject to the energy and the challenges and the lessons of Saturn over the next 3 years. With Saturn in the 9th house, you can expect to have this sort of almost like a spiritual or religious crisis. A lot of times people have where they suddenly feel cut off from their sense of meaning, their sense of purpose. They feel cut off from what they used to believe. They feel more pessimistic in their worldview. And so they have to go in and start doing the work to figure out their own way of practicing religion or practicing spirituality or their own philosophy on life. They look toward, different religious doctrines. They start studying different religious philosophies or different spiritual philosophies. This is also a time where so there's going to be this really incredible striving and searching for meaning, this energy around maybe finding God or finding a connection with something higher than oneself. That's going to be really prevalent for Geminis right now. And that can be a theme for a lot of people. For others, this could be an energy of needing to go back and get additional education. So you're having to put in some sort of effort toward a higher educational pursuit, very literally. And that's going to take more time and more hard work. And it might come about more gradually than you might want to, but this isn't something that you're rushing through. This is something that is going to provide a foundation for a much better future. And so it's one of those things where you have to make small little efforts every single day to reach your long-term goals and plans. For those who are already in school, this could be a delay in completing your education, but that's going to actually be something that's going to be more positive because this delay is going to cause you to have to do things much more slowly, much more methodically, to do things the right way and not the fast way. So maybe you were on one path in your education, you decide to change courses, and all of a sudden you have this new workload that you have to work through, and it's going to take you a couple extra years, but this is going to put you into a better position for your future. This is also if you are somebody who's a teacher who's been thinking about teaching or publishing something, disseminating wisdom in some way. Now is a time where you can work really hard toward that goal and you can actually start to teach. You can start to publish something. You can start to create a foundation or a platform where you can share and spread knowledge and wisdom with other people. It's not going to happen all at once. It's going to be very slow. You're going to have to work very hard at it, but it's something that can absolutely come about throughout this time period over the next 3 years. This could be a time where there could be limitations or restrictions imposed on your ability to travel and travel freely. And the travel that you do is more likely to be work-related or because of something that is going to be more challenging. And so it could be that you're traveling more for business or for your education. It's always about something serious and not necessarily traveling as much for leisure or for fun. And that could be part of this energy too. One of the things, though, that could be happening for you, because this will be in trine with your ascendant, is that this is a time where you're very gradually integrating your belief systems, your moral and ethical value systems into the way that you navigate your reality, into your direction in life, and into the way that you show up in this world through your personality and the way you project your energy outwardly. And so this is you very gradually and very practically aligning yourself with your integrity moving forward. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, this energy with Saturn is going to be transiting your 8th house. And so the 8th house is a house that can be a little bit scary for some people, or it feels a little bit scary for some people because it's the house that rules fear, our deep-seated insecurities, past trauma, anything that's really controlling us from the inside out through our unconscious psychology. And so this is a time where if you have any deep-seated fears, any deep-seated anxieties, any trauma from your past that you have not worked on and worked through, this is a time where you're going to have to put in a lot of effort toward your healing. And that can be something that can be scary to face, but as you go through this process, and if you take small, steady, measured steps every single day to reach that goal of overcoming your fears, of working through your past trauma, of working through all of that psychological stuff that's holding you back and that's controlling you from the inside out, you're going to make a lot of progress, and you're going to go through an incredible healing throughout this 3-year period. It's not going to be something that happens all at once overnight. It's not going to be this profound thing. But when you look back on this time period, you're going to be like, wow. And when I started this, I was traumatized. When I started this, I was afraid. When I started this, I was dealing with these addictions, with these past experiences that were bleeding into the present moment. And now that I've come through this, I feel empowered because I no longer have this baggage. That is the Saturn 8th house energy. This is also a time for those of you who have debt. This is the time where you're going to have to work extra hard to face that challenge, to overcome any debt, to work on very slowly and very gradually restructuring, refinancing, paying off those debts, and letting go of any financial restrictions that are coming through an outside source. And so this could also be you having to deal with past issues where you maybe weren't responsible with your taxes, with other people's money. There could be some sort of limitation or restriction that's imposed on your finances from the outside, maybe through marriage partnership. That can be a part of this energy as well. And so sometimes you'll find that maybe your marriage partner might not have as many resources during this time. And so that's something that you have to work on and work through together. But a lot of times this is an energy where people are working on paying off debts. This is not a time where I recommend taking on new debts. Anyone who has Saturn through the 8th house, any of my clients who have Saturn through the 8th house, I definitely don't recommend to them to, take on additional loans if they can avoid doing that, because it's going to take 10 times longer to pay off. It's going to be much, much harder and, people than what you realize at the time. And so if you can avoid taking on debt, this is a good thing. If you can't avoid it, minimize it as much as possible. Try very hard to, utilize your savings or utilize some sort of cashing in on investments or something along those lines. Don't take out new debt. If you can avoid that in any way, this is a time to pay off debts and not take on new debts. But this is something that you're going to have to work through. So this is you very slowly and very gradually working on obtaining independence and freedom from anyone who's holding money over your head. This is also potentially where you're going to have to face your fears surrounding death. Saturn in the 8th house very literally translates to fear of death. And so if you're somebody who fears that energy or has some sort of fear building around that energy, now's a time where you're going to have to face that, work through it, and overcome it. But this is an energy, again, that's very empowering. Anything that's controlling you externally or internally, you're going to be very slowly working very hard to break free from that. And at the other side of this 3 years, you're going to feel super light and super empowered. It's going to be like, wow, I just overcame all of this. I just let go of all of this baggage. And now I feel so relieved, so empowered. And, it really is a time of healing for you. For Leo and for Leo rising, this energy with Saturn is actually going to be occurring in your 7th house, which is the house of relationships. Now is a time where you're going to be taking your relationships a lot more seriously. If you're in a partnership right now, a long-term partnership of some kind, that's not really going anywhere, now's a time over the next couple of years where you might end up letting go of that relationship. If you're in a committed partnership and, it's a really solid relationship, this is going to be you either recommitting yourself to that partnership or deepening your commitment in partnership. This is a very common time with Saturn transiting the 7th house, for people to either get married or to let go of relationships where marriage is not necessarily a potential, because you want something serious right now. You want something stable, long lasting, and solid. And so if you have that, you're going to lock it down and you're going to want to lock it in. If you don't have that, it's not going to work for you. And so you're going to have to move on and find somebody who fits that energy. Normally with Aquarius in the 7th house, you're somebody who needs a lot of independence, and you still need to maintain a lot of independence within your partnership, but you want to know that that person is going to be with you for the long haul. You want to know that this partnership is going to be solid, long lasting, that it's going to stand the test of time. If that's not what you have, it's not going to last. And so, if you have a really good partnership and a really good marriage, this is not anything to worry about. You might have to face some obstacles and challenges together as a team, and that could be part of this energy. But that's only going to bring you closer together. That's only going to stabilize the partnership. That's only going to create a better foundation for your future. And so this is a good thing for creating that long-lasting energy in partnership. It's not a good thing if the partnership you're in is not one that is sustainable or is serious in some way. In terms of your one-on-one relationships, you might find yourself letting go of people that are just not serious, that don't have your back. Relationships in general, especially close one-on-one relationships that are not stable. This could include business partnerships. This could include close friendships. Really anyone in your life who you interact with one-on-one in a close personal basis, on a regular basis, that is if that relationship with that person is more burden and more trouble than it's worth, you're going to be feeling that burden, that limitation, that heaviness of responsibility that you hold for that person way more so over these next 3 years. And you're going to be wanting to work on letting go of those types of relationships. The close relationships and partnerships that come in over the next 3 years, those are going to be people that have your back. Those are going to be long-lasting friendships, long-lasting business partnerships, really stable, grounded relationships. And so those are going to serve you much better over the next 30-year cycle of Saturn. And so there'll be a lot of people leaving and a lot of people coming in, but it won't happen all at once. It'll be gradual. Usually it won't be just cutting someone off. It's going to be like, this is a long time coming and we're kind of wrapped up in each other's energy. So we need to very slowly work on letting go of this partnership. And the same thing with new partnerships. You're not going to just have something come in all at once. It's going to be a gradual build up toward, okay, I think this is solid. I think this is real. I'm going to let this person in. I'm going to carry this person with me into the future. All right, and for Virgo rising, this energy here with Saturn is actually going to be happening in your 6th house. The 6th house is the house of health, work, and daily routines. And so this is a time where you're going to have to work very, very hard on a day-to-day basis to accomplish your long-term goals and plans in that 10th house of career. And so we have the 6th house, which aspects the 10th house by trine. And so this is where you're going to be very, very busy on a day-to-day basis. You're going to feel the heaviness and the burden of your daily routines, your daily habits, especially in work. And it's going to feel like you have a lot on your shoulders and you're working really hard. Your day-to-day work routines can feel much more oppressive, much more mundane and monotonous. And that can be an issue where you feel this limitation and restriction, and where you decide that you need to very slowly start to work toward creating a structure where you have more independence, where you have more freedom on a day-to-day basis in your work. That can be a really incredible positive thing that you can work toward and build toward throughout this process, but it's not going to happen all at once. You're going to have to make small, measured, sustained efforts every single day to reach those long-term goals and plans in your career path. And just in terms of your day-to-day work or your daily habits and routines. So even if you're not somebody who works, this is an energy where you're going to have to restructure your daily routines. Your day-to-day burdens are going to feel much heavier, and you're going to have to do something to change that. You're going to have to let go of certain burdens every single day and create new structures. If you're somebody who's normally not very good at being regimented in your day-to-day activities, which is kind of a thing for Virgo rising people, you would think that they would be very organized and all this, and they are. But when it comes to their day-to-day work habits, their day-to-day routines, they kind of need a lot of variety, a lot of excitement. Now's a time where they're going to be much more self-disciplined. They're going to be able to stick to a very stable, very locked-in routine a lot more easily. It might not feel good, but it's going to help you in some way or benefit you when it comes to your bigger goals. The other thing too that this can create is some sort of limitation, restriction, or hardship around health and daily health routines where you're going to have to get serious about your health. This is a time where it's very important that you take care of your body and that you do so in a very structured, routine, regimented way where you're taking care of your nutrition every single day, where maybe you're restricting the foods that you eat a little bit more heavily and paying better attention to what's going on with your body, where you're looking maybe to conventional medicine where you would normally be looking to alternatives because that's Saturn in the 6th house. If you do have some sort of health issue, you might have to incorporate some of that. And when it comes to your nutrition, it's time to very slowly and very gradually eliminate the things that are harming your body and to very slowly and gradually start to incorporate the things that you know are going to be supporting your health and your immune system moving forward. This could also be an energy of you having some sort of burden for taking care of somebody who's sick. And if that's the case, make sure that you're also taking care of yourself because Saturn in the 6th house can indicate burnout. And in general, Virgos, take care of yourselves. Make sure you're taking time for yourself to experience joy and to focus on things outside of work because that's going to be very important over the next 3 years for maintaining your sanity and for, not succumbing to that burnout energy because Virgos are more prone to burnout. Virgo burnout is a thing, and this is a time where you're going to want to help everyone do everything, and you're going to feel the weight of your day-to-day routines a lot more, so you want to make sure that you're taking that time for yourself. All right, and then for Libra and for Libra rising. So for you guys, Saturn has just past your 4th house and it's moving into your 5th. This isn't the worst placement for Saturn. When Saturn transits the 5th house, the most common complaint that I get is that there are restrictions on love and romance, or that dating and romance feels like way more trouble than it's worth. It feels like a lot of work during this time. This can also indicate that you have more responsibility or weight on your shoulders around children or around child care, if that's something that's applicable to you. This is a time where, if you're thinking about becoming pregnant, a planned pregnancy could occur, but this could also be a delay in your plans, to get pregnant or have children that comes about for some reason. And so that's something to just be aware of. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just means that it might take more effort and it might come about in a way that's going to take a little bit longer than you might want it to. And so that can be the case for some Libra risings. One of the things that you can do with this Saturn in the 5th house energy that's actually quite nice is that you can take your hobbies, your interests, your passions, the things that you love to do that feel like play, and you can turn them into something really practical. So a lot of people, when they have Saturn transiting their 5th house, they'll start their own business or they'll turn their hobby into a side hustle. This is because this is an energy that can be very positive. It's trining your ascendant, and also because Saturn rules work, it rules doing something really practical in the 5th house of hobbies, interests, fun, things that you do because you love to do them. This is also the 5th house which rules entrepreneurs, and so this can sort of enact your entrepreneurial spirit. It can help you to see very practical ways that you can very slowly start to build some sort of business out of something that you're passionate about. It's not something that's going to happen all at once. It will probably be gradual if this is the case for you. So like maybe you like to do woodworking, and so you start making just a couple of projects for people in your community and selling it, and then you decide maybe I'll put this on Etsy, and then you say, oh, that's going well, maybe I'll make a website, and so it'll start to build from there. And so that can be the case for a lot of Libra risings as well. All right, and then for Scorpio rising, Saturn in Aquarius is going to be moving into your 4th house, which is the house of the home, family, property, your place of living. And so Saturn in the 4th house is an energy where you can have some sort of limitation, restriction, burden imposed when it comes to your family. So this is a common this is a very common transit for people becoming pregnant and having to take on the added responsibility of caring for a child, especially planned pregnancies with Saturn. Saturn is usually something planned, but even if it's unplanned, it's an extra responsibility. It's not necessarily that you feel like your child is a burden and you don't want them or something like that. That's definitely not usually the case with this. It's just that Saturn is responsibility. Fourth house is the home and family. There can be some sort of added responsibility in the home, and I've seen this very commonly. Pregnancies are very highly associated with Saturn transits, especially in a woman's chart, to the ascendant, to the IC, and to the descendant. Oh, which, by the way, I should go back and mention that for the Leo people, that could actually be, you know, taking on a new responsibility as a couple for a child. But that could be the case for Scorpios as well. Usually, if that's not something you're planning, that's not what's going to happen. But if it is something you're planning for, that can be the case. And then that Saturn in the fourth house energy sometimes is having to take on the added burden or responsibility of caring for somebody in your family, like a parent who maybe needs additional care, additional help for some reason. This could also be a limitation or restriction that's imposed on your living situation where you have to downsize, or you have to restructure or put in a lot of effort in your home. And so this could be a great time to very slowly do something like renovating your home, putting in some work to fix things that need to be fixed. It's not something you're going to do all at once. It's something that you're going to work on very gradually. So it's like over the next 3 years, you're going to very slowly work on fixing up and improving your home. This is also an energy where it's actually a time where a lot of people will buy a home as opposed to renting. So if you're somebody who's been renting and moving around with that Aquarius fourth house energy for quite some time, now's a time where you might want to lock yourself into something more permanent. That's Saturn, right? And take the responsibility for a long-term like home ownership. And so that's something that could occur for you as well. This could be a time where where there's some sort of limitation on your living situation where you're forced to move, or where your living situation becomes much more burdensome for some reason. That could be because there's a lot of improvements that you need to make and that there are things that are breaking and it's sort of taking your time and energy. Or that could be because maybe you have a bad situation with a roommate or somebody who you live with that becomes really challenging. So you have to think about, is this situation worth holding on to? Whatever it is that you're working on here, whatever challenges you're facing, you're working on overcoming those challenges and creating a much better, more solid foundation for your future for the next 30-year cycle of Saturn. This is also a time to deal with ancestral karma and to look at your family lineage and any sort of trauma or fears that stem from your early childhood experience and your upbringing, because the fourth house is the house that rules those things and it also rules the parents in childhood. And so if you have early childhood abuse, if you have difficult circumstances that occurred during childhood, this is a time where you're going to have to work through those on an emotional and a psychological level. And a lot of healing can take place. This is a time where your connections with your family might be limited or restricted in some way. Maybe you're working more or you have to spend time away from the family, and that could be part of this as well. But for the most part, this is about you creating a solid foundation. So what do you want for the next 30-year cycle of Saturn when it comes to your family? What do you want your family life to look like? What do you want your home to look like? Where do you want to live? These are all questions that you should be pondering and thinking about and working on, resolving over the course of the next 3 years. All right, and for Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising, this energy with Saturn is occurring in your third house, which is the house of communication. It's the house of marketing. It's the house of writing. It's the house of education. This is a time where you might be working really hard to take on additional courses so that way you can further your education, especially if it's having to do with practical skill sets and things like that. And also if that additional responsibility you're taking on for your education is going to provide more independence and sovereignty for you in the future, more freedom in the future. Saturn transiting through the third house is a time where your conversations become much more serious. I just had this transit and it's like all of my conversations over the last 3 years were like work related. I've been working really hard. I've been connecting and collaborating with a lot of really wonderful people through my work, but it's been work, 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 serious, serious, serious. A lot of really intense conversations, and not a lot of like lighthearted, surface level stuff. And that's not really what you're going to want. You're not going to have time for that right now. Your mental energy is going to be concentrated on building something that's really pertinent to your future. And so that's going to be part of this energy as well. This could be a time where if you have a business, you might have to work extra hard on learning how to market your business or creating some sort of marketing plan. If you're somebody who writes, this is a time where you might be working really hard on writing your next novel, writing your next thing that you might want to publish into the future. This could be a time where you might want to start a blog or start writing things in smaller bursts, but it's going to take more time to take off. It's going to take more energy than you think it might in the beginning. And so it's going to be a lot more work. And this is a time where if you're somebody who teaches, where you might have to get very serious about that path. You might have to get very serious about creating courses, about creating online types of courses with Saturn and Aquarius. And this is a time where you're going to have a lot more, you're going to feel burdened by your communication. It's going to be like your emails are overflowing. Your text messages are overflowing. The communication is just nonstop, and that can feel kind of heavy. And so you're going to have to very slowly and very methodically every single day work toward creating better systems and structures so you don't have that burden in the future. This is also a great time for you to re-solidify your commitment in partnership with other people. So in marriage, in business, and in close friendship. This is a time where you're going to very easily become more committed, where you're going to be able to take on new responsibilities together as a team with other people. And that's just going to flow pretty easily in harmony without you having to put in a lot of effort. That's just something that's naturally going to occur as a result of this transit. All right, Capricorn and Capricorn rising. So lucky Capricorn, you get Saturn out of your first house. Not that that's like the worst energy for a Capricorn, but it'll feel nice. It'll feel like a relief. The thing that's going to be maybe a little bit heavier for you over the next 3 years is going to be your finances. This is a time where your finances might be limited or restricted in some way. It's very common for people to go through a period where they have to downsize because their finances are not necessarily always cut off, but that can be the case, but they're limited in some way. My husband just had this transit. He had to take a pay cut so we could move to Colorado. And as soon as Saturn moved out of his second house, his pay went back up to its normal rate, right? So that was like very literally what happened. There was a limitation and restriction on his pay. It literally lifted the moment Saturn left, or is leaving the sign of Sagittarius, leaving the sign of Capricorn and moving into Aquarius. And so that could be the case for you. There might be a temporary limitation or restriction that could be a little challenging. It could cause you to have to tighten your budget a little bit, but that's not necessarily going to be something that will last for the long term. And it might be something that can help further your long-term financial goals or some sort of long-term goal where there's a long-term benefit. You're kind of looking at the delayed gratification aspect of this. So maybe you take a job that is going to give you less pay, but there's a benefit to taking this job in the long term where it's going to set you up for greater success in your future. And so you go for it. This could also be a time where you have to save money because you're paying off debts or because you're saving for a major purchase. This is another thing that's very common with Saturn transiting the second house. If you are somebody who has debt, if you are somebody who's been very irresponsible with your finances, you're going to feel that now. And this is a time where you're going to have to get serious. You're going to have to get your ducks in a row. You're going to have to start making effort every single day to keep track of your budget, to take care of your finances, to pay off bills, and to clean up any mess you've made financially. The end result of this, though, is that you're going to set yourself up for financial success for the long term, for the next 30-year cycle of Saturn. So whatever challenges you're facing, especially at the onset, that's when it can feel the heaviest. Just know that this is leading to something. This is helping you create a more sustainable financial situation for your future. All right, and then Aquarius and Aquarius rising. So for you guys, this is hitting your sign. And so that Aquarius ascendant energy, when Saturn hitting the ascendant energy, when Saturn hits your ascendant, that is a huge cosmic reset. This is a time where you're letting go of any old conditioning, anything that is not you, anything that you're doing because people have told you that you should or that you have to, any way that you're behaving, any energy that you're taking on that is not yours due to demands from the outside, conditioning in your childhood, what society expects from you, you're going to be very, very easily able over the next 3 years to let go of any of that. Anything that's not you, it's not going to be there anymore. Anything that's not authentic to you, you're going to be letting go of it. Anything that's inhibiting your ability to focus on your true path, on your goals, direction, and orientation in life in its truest, cleanest form, you're going to be letting go of that. And so this is a time too where you're going to start to reap the rewards and the benefits for things that you've done and managed very responsibly in your life. And so this is kind of an energy where Saturn hitting any point in your chart is kind of like you have this like orange and you're putting it in a juice press. And so Saturn is causing you to have to squeeze out and receive all of the benefits of all of the hard work, all of the effort that you've made in terms of self-responsibility over the course of the last 30-year cycle of Saturn. So over the last 30 years, you get to reap those rewards. You get to drink that really nice orange juice. But then you have this rind, right? This is all the excess. This is all the stuff that is not useful to you anymore. You have to figure out what to do with that, right? Are you going to just throw it out? Are you going to compost it? Is there something you can do with this? That's sort of the energy of Saturn transiting the first house and transiting the ascendant. It's like, okay, I let go. I got the rewards and benefits of the responsibility I've taken on. I let go of, I need to let go of all of this burden that is not mine to carry moving forward. So how do I do that? What do I do with that? And so this isn't a time where you just let go of every aspect of your life that you don't feel connected to or that feels too burdensome or that feels oppressive in some way all at once. You have to do it in a responsible way. You have to do it in a very gradual way. You have to make sure that you're tying up your loose ends and not leaving a mess for other people to clean up. But you will be moving on from a lot of different aspects of your existence that are no longer serving you. This is going to be a year where you change, or a 3-year period where you change on a personal level. You might actually go through a period of physical change too with Saturn transiting your first house. You might come out the other side and be like, wow, my entire style has changed. My appearance has changed in some way. This is one of the best times to lose weight and to get, to work really hard on creating a better physical appearance and physical health. It's time to work on your body. The first house is the body. And so if that's something that you've been wanting to do, now is a time where you can do that. And this is also a time where you can have changes really in a lot of the major areas of your life. Your career can change, your relationships can change, your home and family life can change. But again, it's going to be a very gradual buildup where you're going to be working on changing these things over the course of the next 3 years in very small, measured, sustainable efforts as opposed to doing it all at once. All right. And then for Pisces and for Pisces rising, this Saturn energy is happening in your 12th house. So you're entering into your Saturn 12th house transit. And so this is a 3-year period where a lot of times people who have Saturn transiting their 12th house, they find themselves having to go through a period of isolation. It's either a self-imposed isolation where you feel like you need to pull back from the world, you need to rest more, you need to spend time on your own, or sometimes life circumstances can push you in that direction. In either case, you're going to be spending more time on your own, and it's going to be a time of deep inner reflection, of deep introspection. This is going to be a time where you're going to get very serious about your spirituality and your spiritual disciplines, and this is a time where a lot of really incredible progress can come through spiritual exploration. But again, in a very gradual, sustained, small, measured way. It's going to happen over time. This is also a time where you're kind of in a wrapping up phase. This is a time where you're going to be letting go of a lot of aspects of your life in preparation for the cosmic reset of Saturn on your ascendant, which will happen beginning in 2023. And so any past karma that you've accumulated over the last 30 years that is no longer serving you, anything baggage that you're carrying with you from previous lifetimes that is no longer serving you, you're going to be letting go of that. So this is a time of wrapping up. This is a time of endings. This is a time of letting go on a major scale for Pisces rising people in particular. but planning to spend more time on your own, planning to spend more time in more of a reclusive state. And you're going to want to do that anyway. You're going to feel it and you're going to be like, I don't really want to be out and about. I don't really want to be engaging with the world in the same way that I used to. That's going to be something you'll feel pulled toward anyway. But planning for that and finding ways that you can do that in a way that's practical and has some sort of practical value, that's going to be, I think, a really important key to navigating this energy and structuring that downtime in a way that's productive and using that time for spiritual exploration or for doing something very practical in a creative sense. I think that that's going to be, some of the best ways that you can utilize this energy moving forward. All right. And so that is the forecast for all 12 zodiac signs for Saturn in Aquarius. So we all have a lot of work to do. We're just entering into this phase of challenge and responsibility and also new opportunity, right? If we can face these challenges head on, if we can put in the work, we're setting ourselves up for success. We're setting ourselves up with a good foundation for our future goals and plans. And so keep that in mind. This isn't about short-term gratification. This is about our long-term goals. This is about our future, way far off into the future, right? Because it's a 30-year cycle. So this is about preparing and planning for what we want for the next 30 years of our lives in the area that's being impacted by Saturn. So this is a big moment in time. It's really important to take seriously. And I hope that you found this video helpful in navigating the energy. If you did find this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share it with some of your friends who might benefit from this information as well. All right, thank you guys so much.